Grineer. Seeds from the ruins of the old war, swallowing colonies whole. But there's still hope.
Where exactly are the humans in Warframe? Ostrons, Corpus, Orokin, even the people of Solaris. The descendants would fool you into thinking they are human, but they might not be. All were either slightly mutated or completely changed. So where do you fit a human? Perhaps in one of the most unlikely places, the Grineer, a clone-rotted warrior caste. Though they were not always like this. In this video, we will explore everything that the Grineer were, are, and might be, all in an effort to find the remains of what used to be us. Let's begin. As any growing nation, the Orokin at the pinnacle of their reign seeked laborers. They were a pompous and prideful race, most likely feeling that they were above any mundane task. They also were experts in all forms of science, especially in genetics. The obvious course of action would be to acquire more laborers, and what better way to gain them than to make them? Grineer literally means genetically engineered, using an unknown genetic template to create a race of stable clones. These Grineer were vastly different from the Grineer we are used to. The first and most notable difference is that they were not fighters at all, used mainly to mine various materials for their Orokin masters, once again showing how the Orokin were the root of all evil in the system. The Grineer were a race created to be enslaved and oppressed, working day in and day out. It wasn't until the height of the war between the Sentients and the Orokin that the Grineer would be given a new purpose, a new meaning. The smashing is like music. My machine's striking pin rams the rock in front of me. A rush of bits crumbles from the rock and rolls over my boots. I see glinting in the rubble. I like it when it shines. It means I'm serving well. I thrust my shovel in, its plasma blades slicing clean through the chunks. It vibrates, so I switch on its inducer, and the shiny bits clink on. Then I throw them into the sorter, and jump out of the way of the next strike. More rumble, more shining. This is a good day, all of us, shoveling to the beat of machines. Only a fraction of a cycle left on this rock. Days, really. I keep thinking, what will the next rock be like? The outer terminus has many rocks. Good rocks. I like it here. I shovel again and jump out of the way of the next smash. The machines stop, and it goes dark. Why have the machines stopped? Why is it dark? A voice reverberates all around. A thundering whisper. The rock shakes like never before. Gravel rains in the darkness. I choke on the dust and struggle to find my balance on the shifting ground. The voice booms again. It is in the air. It is in the rock. It is in my head. My ears ring like sirens. Then I hear new smashing. It is coming from down the tunnel. Not rhythmic smashing, not the music. Something else. And I do not like it. There are other voices too. Screaming voices. They make me think of the way we scream when there's an accident. When one of us gets caught in a sorter. There's much screaming. The voice grows louder.
There was no their mother.
Out of the darkness, a new light rounds the distant corner and shines down the tunnel. Our lights do not look like this. It is a part of something big and it moves wildly. Running? Yes, running through our line. Our machines fly up and then slam back down. Miners are smashed and crushed into tiny pieces. I'm scared. I'm angry. Why is this happening? Is that an Orokin? No. We serve the Orokin. The Orokin are golden. This is something else. I pick up my shovel. The light is close now. I find my footing and grip my shovel like I do when I chip ore. The light sends a machine flying at me. I jump, but I'm too slow. It crashes into my chest and pins my legs to the floor. I tried. I look up and the light charges toward me. I raise my shovel just before it tramples into me. There's a clink. The light catches itself on my shovel's blade, forcing the shovel's butt deep into the hard ground. The light explodes under its own force. All is black. For a moment there is silence. I pull on the shovel, but it is wedged between the ground and that thing. Then the shovel pulses like it does when I strike a shiny chunk of ore. Without thinking, I flick on the shovel's inducer. The voice screams. Everything shakes. I like hearing this scream. I do not know why. I use everything I have left to force the shovel in deeper. The thing reels back. I can feel it running. It's running away. Everything goes quiet again. So I close my eyes.
Over here, I found one.
A wave of pain rushes through my chest. My eyes dart open. There's a light. I try to get out of the way, but I cannot move. The light shouts.
Hurry, he's not going to last very long.
I try to talk, but a new voice speaks instead.
Relax, it doesn't matter. If he can survive that, they warrant his sample for the next batch.
They are lifting me onto something. I catch glimpses of shimmering gold.
This is a bad idea. I mean, would you trust a Grineer soldier?
The figure presses something into my arm, and I want to sleep again. The new voice laughs.
Do we have any other choice?
After a Grineer luckily killed a sentient, he was taken back to the Orokin to be used as a sample for a new race of clones. Out of desperation, the Orokin repurposed the Grineers to be used as soldiers. The sentients did not let up on their assaults, so the Orokin resorting to drastic measures was everything but rare. They tried everything, from diseases to experimental machinations. As we know, nothing worked but the Warframes. The Grineer, like the infested, were just a deterrent. Soon after the Warframes were created, the war was over. Quickly, Warframes dominated the sentients and received praise from their golden lords, until they killed them. Most of them. Meanwhile, Orokin twins leapt at the chance to control the relatively new army of Grineer soldiers. These twins would be hailed as queens by the Grineer, idolized for their kinship. With the power of a cloned army, the queens wiped out the remnants of the Orokin Empire, as the Tenno went dormant. This dormancy would allow the Grineer to run rampant, growing large enough to be an empire, with their own culture and language. They began to scour the system for leftover Orokin technology to solve a problem the queens hadn't the knowledge for. So over time, after losing access to the original genetic template the warrior Grineer was made from, the clones became increasingly unstable. And by unstable, I mean rotting. Genetic defects ravaged them all. This excessive deterioration caused the Grineer to replace parts of their bodies with technology. yet still they led short lives. However, this did not stop them from becoming a scourge of the Origin system, leading us to the beginning of the game, where the Tenno were awoken by the Lotus, to protect the system from being conquered by the Grineer. The kinship of the Grineer's new queens became not just influential, but the core of their beliefs, hence why they refer to each other as brother and sister. They are also created to revere the twin queens. The Grineer speak a very broken down form of English that can somewhat be deciphered when listened to closely. Thanks to the wonderful lore community and the people over on the wiki, some of it has already been deciphered. Their writing is more symbols than any distinguishable language. Between their text and speech, this language is very rudimentary. I don't believe this language was intentional like that of the corpus. The reason I say this is because it is just a very broken language of another. I'm not sure if the characters in Warframe consider the language they are speaking English, but if they do, that proves what I'm about to tell you. What we know of Grineer culture is that it is strictly militaristic. They shun almost every form of creativity or sentimentality for the sake of power, unless it serves the queens. They worship these queens less like queens and more like gods, to the point where females in the Grineer are treated better by birthright. There actually is an amazing video by Stalor D on this very topic. As for the Grineer home life, it is completely unknown. Due to their cloning, they don't have any way of reproducing properly to our current knowledge. Now, I don't mean that the Grineer cannot create children, I just mean the Grineer cannot create genetically stable children. They effectively would have the same problem. At the rate in which the Grineer are dying, they can't fix their problem in that way. So the reason I believe the Grineer's language is so simplistic is solely due to their process of reproduction and culture of war. Grineer are kept in some sort of stasis until they are grown enough to be soldiers. My theory is that they have to have some way to speed up the process of growth, otherwise there would be no more Grineer. They don't have a need for home life, therefore they don't have one. They don't have a need for a more complex language, therefore they don't have one. As for morality, we know it is present in higher ups, but we actually see the development of morality with Call-175, a lancer in the New War. Call becomes a defector from the Grineer army after he and his brethren get saved by the Tenno.
Who helped Grineer today? Not queens, not Vahek. Tenno and Blue Girl help brothers. Other brothers still.
The capacity for higher thinking varies greatly in the Grineer army. As we can see with the Steel Meridian, there were many more defectors before Call. Grineer are born with different parameters to determine their place in society. Naturally, physically stronger Grineer are placed higher in the ranks, whilst weaker Grineer are to live a short life on the front lines. You see, Grineer praise strength above all else. One of their most popular forms of entertainment seems to be trial by combat, Rathum, which we will touch on later. When it comes to intelligence and individuality, the queens shun this as they think it promotes disloyalty. In a way, they want their subjects to be as smart as they need them to be. So what happens when Grineer with different goals than their queens rise to power? We get factions, all pursuing conquest in completely different ways, and their leaders tell the tale of why. The Grineer have never been collectively foolish. In fact, they seized the system faster than even the Lotus predicted they would, hence our abrupt awakening. That brings us to the first leader we know, Captain Vor, formerly known as Admiral Vor. He shows his individuality before the game even begins. He is tasked with killing the Tenno before they awaken by the queens themselves, and he decides that he'd rather capture them. Of course he did that for the purpose of furthering the Grineer, but it still went against the queens. So despite it being a good idea, the queens demoted him. Vor wanting to harvest Warframe technology was only the beginning of his disloyalty toward the queens. Vor was obsessed with obtaining Orokin technology, not just to solve the problem of the cloning disease. Vor was also responsible for leading some of the forces on Earth. The Frontier Grineer are the earliest Grineer you will encounter along with the Space Marines. The Frontier Grineer are likely responsible for the poisoning of Earth, as you will see in a sabotage mission. They remain in the dense forests on Earth. The Space Marines guard the mining operations, and they predominantly stay on the Grineer ships. But before we go any further, there are other forms of lore that the devs consider canon that we should go over. What I'm referencing is the Warframe comic that I still believe holds some validity. The story in the 5-book series talks about Vor fresh off of his demotion chasing a blind Ostron girl because of her knowledge of a nearby Orokin vault. This comic series is considered canon by D.E. Steve, but it does contradict with Vor's in-game story. Nor is Mitsuki, the blind girl, or the story ever mentioned in the game, to my knowledge. So from now on, we will only reference what is in the game. Captain Vor's primary goal was to unlock the secrets of the Orokin, though he leads you to believe that he wanted to save the Grineer. His later escapades within the Void would show you otherwise. The first time you kill him, he is revived by the Yanis Key, an Orokin artifact used to access various locations. The second time you find Vor in the Void, he attacks you and is defeated. He talks of his ascension to immortality, becoming quote-unquote energy. He also makes one last appearance in the Duviri Undercroft, stating that a wall of bone awaits him. Vor also had a few relations during his time on the battlefield. The only one we really know about is Nock, a Grineer veteran that would eventually succumb to his clone decay. Vor would allow him leave, and he would live the rest of his days as an executioner in Rathum. The others I feel should be mentioned are Lieutenant Let Krill and Counselor Vahek. Even higher in the food chain was Counselor Vahek. He has numerous achievements, weapons, and soldiers under his belt. He is not only the leader of the Tusk units in the plains, but he is also responsible for the frontier units as well. Vahek is a tyrannical and fanatical leader. His loyalty to the queens knows no bounds. He is willing to do anything for the sake of the Grineer succeeding, and quickly proves to be far more dangerous than Vor. Counselor Vahek, with the help of Dr. Tenghis, created the Ghouls, a vicious army made up of defective, malformed Grineer. More specifically, they are made out of leftover gene slurry, a sort of liquid harboring raw genetic material which is repurposed to make ghouls in mass quantities. Ghouls are then deployed on Earth, and they wait in the ground to ambush any unsuspecting Warframe. Although these units may prove easy for Warframes to dispatch, they all harbor toxic paralytic blood, becoming a threat to anyone in proximity. Their design philosophy being simple: overwhelming numbers and surprise. The ghouls under Vahek even have a hierarchy of their own. Ghoul alphas are ghouls that may either be more vicious or smarter than the rest. This allowed these alphas to lead the pack in more creative ways. Also under the command of Vahek is the Grusstrag 3, arrogant, sadistic, unstable, Leekter, Shiktal, and Vemtabuk. These 3 Grineer were imprisoned for killing fellow Grineer. Afterwards, Vahek took interest in their potential for violence, but he could not control them. Dr. Tenghis once again enters the mix to put all 3 criminals through agony treatment to direct their aggression toward the Tenno. Agony treatment, I can only imagine, is specialized torture for the purpose of reinstituting the Grineer mindset, or in this case, to point these serial killers toward Tenno rather than Grineer. As a precaution, Dr. Tenghis equipped them with the Grusstrag Bolt, which is capable of dispatching them if they prove disloyal. Another general under the name of Sargis Ruk disapproves of the Grusstrag 3, believing they should have been executed for their crimes. Almost all of the threats to Earth can be traced back to Vahek. He is the most ruthless Grineer leader we know of. Renowned among the Grineer, some even donated to his campaign. Kayla Ditham, the owner of the war arena known as Rathum. Kayla is a sadistic character as one would expect. the owner of an arena where execution and bloodshed is entertainment. Not much is known about her origins or how she obtained her position, but she does have several different executioners that do have origins that I'll explain briefly. Zura is an executioner that seemed to just appear in the pits. Ve Molta was given to Kayla from Hek after her donation. Reth was a miner turned serial killer after he repurposed his mining tools into weapons. He fled from the Grineer to Kayla where he knew he would be kept from execution. Nock served Captain Vor for many years until he eventually succumbed to clone decay. With Vor's blessing, Nock went on to become an executioner for the rest of his days. Harkonar was a noble that was not satisfied with watching the weapons she created wreak havoc. She decided to become an executioner to use them herself. Orth, a former member of the Night Watch Corps, a special group of elite Grineer, after accidentally killing a close ally of Lek Krill, his career was destroyed. Now he attempts to redeem himself as an executioner. Goresh survived the battle with the Tenno, but the rest of his squadron didn't. After returning to the Grineer, he was tried as a deserter and thrown into Rathum. Goresh managed to kill all of his executioners and was pardoned as long as he became an executioner himself. Doc Thol failed to save one of his allies as a medic and was reassigned to be an executioner. Durnham was another sadist, unsatisfied with pain he could inflict with his current body. He heard of experimental body augmentations and raced to Tile Rhaegor. His strength increased, but only for a short while. He weakened due to him drawing invigoration from pain, then became an executioner. Moving away from the sadism of Kayla, Tile Rhaegor is another character like Vahek who has received a large amount of development and inclusion in the story. Tile Rhaegor's significance to the Grineer is that of a researcher, commanding the Marine Grineer force called the Drakkar, doing his best to recover the genetic genius that the Orokin understood when they manufactured the Grineer, and with his Tubemen, he was getting close. Tubemen are cloned Grineer that are stronger and healthier than normal Grineer. As we have already seen with Durnham the Executioner, Tile Rhaegor devoted himself to tinkering with biology, and in order to do all of his tinkering, he recedes to a murky underwater laboratory on Uranus. Pun intended. Aside from Vahek and the Queens, Tile may be the most important Grineer currently. Even inching upon the technology the Orokin had is astounding. Just to give a perspective on how advanced the Orokin were, the weapons and warframes the Orokin made perhaps a few millennia ago are still stronger than the weapons and warframes now. So far, no faction has come close, even the Tenno. I believe Rhaegor is the first to figure it out. The validity of that claim is at the mercy of time though. After Alid V experimented with Infested because of his research on the Warframes, he was infected with the strain he created. Rhaegor's breakthroughs lead him to believe that there was hope for a cure. But before we could find out whether or not Rhaegor could cure it, Nef Anyo betrayed Alid V, paying the Tenno to destroy the research in Rhaegor's laboratory.
Can you feel it? From my perch at Nightwave, I listen at the windows of the wealthy and well-to-do. Ever heard of Saturn VI? News to me too. Turns out the Grineer have a max pin floating some 6 leagues deep in the gas. No one knew about it, 'cause no one ever busted out. Until now, right. Some Grineer meathead they started calling the Wolf, on account of him taking up howling at night. Decrypts say he was a model prisoner, doing the time, fabbing bombs with the rest of his Khan brothers. Apple of the Warden's eye even. But something cracked, and now he's out there on the loose. The so-called Wolf of Saturn VI.
Saturn VI, a max penitentiary floating 6 leagues deep in the gas on Saturn. A model prisoner by the name of the Wolf suddenly broke loose but did not escape. He only hacked into Corpus communications, leaving a message that read, "Deliver Garn." Garn, the warden of Saturn VI, had been selling Grineer prisoners to the Corpus for experimentation. The wolf was clearly one to care for his brothers, otherwise his reputation of being a model prisoner would not have been so. The wolf did get a response from Alid V. "Garn is yours." This led to the wolf and his pack to be captured and hybridized with Alid's amalgam experiments. Alid wanted to use the wolf to destroy the Tenno, because what better to hunt your prey than a pack of wolves? But he miscalculated. It took decades to domesticate wolves and turn them into dogs. It was only a matter of time for this wolf and his pack to gnaw through the leash. After the new war, Call -175 would run into the wolf while he was veiled and try to end his suffering. Before he could strike the final blow, the wolf escaped, never to be found again. A story once lost, recovered by fate. The tale of two sisters who bore the same face. Born one quiet morning, amidst the great war, all elders were gathered for this life's new dawn. Confused and bewildered, they judged them amiss, for they never witnessed two self-same as these. A mirrored reflection had come into life, by will of their father, kept safe from the knife. Their sameness was shunned, as slave-like and soiled, they tended their strays, rejected by all. As both girls matured, their bond grew in depth. They had the same poise, same senses, same strength. The uprising came and spread like a weed, an army of copymen, ferocious and free. And much like the sea, they came just like waves. For years they fought on. For years we remained, like chiseled to stone. War molded the twins, who ravaged the hordes, became legend to them. They had a deep strength that came from each other, unlike all these copies, identical but not brothers. The copies could see it, they yearned for it too. If the queens could do it, perhaps they could too. The twins had attained something more than a whole, a true understanding of each other's soul. The copies became believers, one by one bowed to the twins, and led forth by their new masters, they ravaged the colonies. Now a power to follow, not a force to be fought. From the ashes of war, the twin queens were wrought. Not much is known about the twin queens besides their motivation. The rise of the Grineer Empire is a direct result of the Twin Queens being cast out of Orican society. The poem is found with unlocking all of the curia and talks of the twins being shunned. With this information, it's no wonder why they were so quick to betray the Orican. The Grineer felt the Twin Queens related to them, as most Grineer looked the same, hence why serving them came naturally. They have carefully curated the Grineer to suit whatever purpose they needed, yet the Grineer still remained to be a seemingly chaotic bunch. The reason for this was the aforementioned need for higher individuality. Despite this perspective, I hope that you all see how organized and complex the Grineer are at this point, surprisingly due to the shortcomings of their queens. Their goal to create a completely obedient race of clones ultimately failed, but they succeeded at the same time, as we have seen with the Grineer leaders. The interesting thing about the queens actually has nothing to do with who they are or their Orican origins. They gave the beginning of an answer, how the Orican were able to extend their lifespan. The introduction of Kuva, the lifeblood. Kuva allowed the Orican to transfer their consciousness into younger bodies. Continuity. Kuva was an extremely valuable and coveted resource. It was said that the servants couldn't even look at a flask without being glassed immediately. What we know about this liquid is that it is somewhat linked to the void and that it may also have a blue variant with different properties. From its effects on the Grineer, we also know it can enhance a lifespan drastically. Not only that, but enhance intelligence, strength, size, along with numerous other changes. The point I'm trying to make here is, if the Orokin understood this liquid more than anyone else, what were they truly capable of? The Grineer Queens are possibly the only ones who know, or perhaps remember, which makes them even more important than they already are. The Queens are located in a base hidden on an asteroid, the Kuva Fortress. The Grineer stationed there are stronger than any other Grineer. My theory is that they've all been slightly enhanced by Kuva. With all the red decor around the fortress, Kuva is clearly revered here as well. Currently in the story, the Elder Queen was mortally wounded by us, and the Worm Queen is trying to find a way to revive her using the Kuva. But speaking of dead things, let's talk about why I think Kuva and the Grineer can bring back the human race. Before I begin, I know what most of you are thinking. What about the Ostrons, the Corpus, and every other race that are humanoid? Aren't they human? The answer is no and yes. There was no telling how much time has passed since the original human race existed until now. We know that Albrecht went back in time to 1999, Plague Year, which could have happened up to or more than a decamillennium ago. 10,000 years from where we are currently in Warframe. How I deduce this is from researching the age of the Orokin and trying to approximate how long the Tenno were asleep. Albrecht was at least 1,000 years old. He himself stated that he's lived many lifetimes. We know that even Orokin history was thousands of years ago from now in Warframe. So that of course means humans are even older, most likely lost to evolution. The Orokin seem to be an elite branch of humans, whilst the lesser humans branched off into different subspecies. Take the Ostrons for example. They are all abnormally short compared to our Tenno. If we are to assume that the Tenno are at most teenagers, the Tenno should not be taller than every Ostron unless that was a mutation the human race underwent some millennia ago. We know that the Orokin tampered with their genome and their lifespans were much longer. Some even lived indefinitely through continuity. So if all the races we see now were humans that were either genetically tampered with or offshoots, then where is the normal human race? It doesn't exist, is what we believe. But what if I told you that the humans we recognized were hidden in plain sight? The Grineer. Clones of clones, created by an original template manufactured by the Orokin. Or maybe the original template of the Orokin. Humans. The last of what makes humans human, hidden deep within the Grineer. The Orokin would have likely seen this version of them as lesser, so creating clones and enslaving them was ideal. We all know that humans are exceptional laborers, so imagine if the Grineer found a way to reverse their genetic defects using Kuva in the coming future, correcting the template that made them originally. I believe they would effectively remake the human race. But that's even further in the future than we already are. They say the past holds the key to future problems. I guess we'll see in another story.